My name is Celia Thompson. I am 24 years old, and I live in Halifax, Nova Scotia. My life has always been a bit of a juggling act. I'm a full-time university student trying to balance my studies with my job as a healthcare worker. With the world turned upside down by the pandemic, I thought I would face the biggest challenge during that time, but little did I know that the real struggle would come when I decided to sublet an apartment. When I found out that my university had limited dorm availability due to COVID regulations, I hurried to secure an apartment with just a month to spare before classes kicked off again. I had hopes that this new living situation would be a fresh start, a new chapter of independence. However, instead of getting comfort and camaraderie, I fell into a nightmare of my own making. I ended up subletting a room in an apartment from a younger guy who was about to start his first year at my university. His mother, a real estate agent from out of town, was the actual landlord. She thought I would be a solid influence on her son, which was sweet of her, but I was definitely walking into a ticking time bomb. The third room was rented out to an international student I now refer to as Fruitfly. From the start, I put a lot of thought into how I wanted to live with these guys, so I did not hold back during our initial Zoom call. I made it absolutely clear that I was not their mother or maid who would take on the bulk of the housework. We discussed the essentials like furniture and house rules, and I even introduced the idea of a chore schedule. To my surprise, Fruitfly was visibly shocked when I mentioned that everyone should be responsible for their own food. He had the audacity to suggest cooking group meals for bonding purposes. I made it clear that I was willing to do that maybe once every 2 weeks, conditional on whoever didn't cook doing the dishes. Other roommates seemed on board with the idea, but Fruitfly was fuming inside. I had no idea how bad it would get. Just as I was preparing to move in, Fruitfly encountered delays entering Canada due to COVID restrictions. My other roommate and I had time to bond and establish a balanced routine, and we shared the chores without any issues at all. In fact, we were both relieved to avoid the burden of having to deal with Fruitfly's entitlement. When he finally did arrive, I had planned to extend some kindness by making him dinner, considering he had just traveled a long way. However, the first thing that flew out of his mouth was, "So, what did you make for dinner?" As if I owed him a meal. I quickly retorted, "I said I was only going to be cooking for myself, remember?" That was the moment his entitled nature began to manifest in full form. I decided to go back on my original plan and not make him dinner after that. From that point onward, the living situation spiraled out of control. He cornered me in the kitchen multiple times, interrogating me about my personal life and my meals, clearly invading my boundaries. The worst part? He started stealing my food. Can you imagine? A full-grown man raiding my fridge as if I was his personal chef. He even tampered with my food, adding allergens I previously mentioned to him and the other roommate, making the kitchen a place of anxiety rather than comfort. There were nights when he would sit outside my bedroom blasting Bollywood music at 4 in the morning, completely oblivious to anyone else's needs. I became almost afraid to step outside my room. He refused to clean up after himself, leaving dirty dishes piled high around the apartment and creating a disgusting atmosphere. At one point, I discovered a black ring around the bathtub, evidence of his neglect. It was so bad that I began to sponge bathe just to avoid the filth. I put up with his antics to an unbearable point, like catching him clipping his toenails on my chair. This was one of only 2 pieces of furniture I had in the shared space, because he insisted we buy all new furniture while contributing nothing to the purchases himself. Many times, he expressed his belief that if I did not clean up after him, I should pay for a maid service. It was unreal. There were even instances where I caught him trying to break into my bedroom at night. I had to resort to locking and barricading my door with my dresser just to feel safe in my own home. Every time I opened my door, he would try to peek inside, acting like my overly possessive boyfriend, demanding to know where I had been. As my patience dwindled, I finally turned to my other roommate for support. Together, we gathered evidence of his disgusting habits and shared our experiences with his mother. After much back and forth, she decided to evict him, bringing me a breath of relief just as the school year ended. You would think that would be the end of my troubles, but it turned out that the fallout was just beginning. Fast forward to November 2025. I received an email from a landlord in Halifax asking if I was indeed Fruitfly's former roommate. To my horror, he had used me as a reference for a new apartment without my permission. I could not believe what I was reading. I responded quickly, stating, "Hello, yes, I can confirm I was Fruitfly's roommate from 2022 to 2023. I do not have a single kind thing to say about him and would prefer to never be contacted about this again. Thank you and take care." As I pressed send, I felt a glimmer of satisfaction wash over me. I knew the rental market in Halifax was vicious, and I could only imagine that he would struggle to find another place. I was no longer a victim. I had taken my stand. No longer would I allow this man who had brought chaos into my life to continue to hurt me or anyone else. I chose to turn my experience into a lesson learned and took immense pride in the fact that I had voiced my concerns about him. He had tried to use my name as a means to an end, but instead, I became the wall that stood in his way. The world may have turned chaotic, but I found my strength in standing up against toxicity. This was my story of the longest overdue revenge, one that gave me the sense of justice I so desperately craved. I ended that chapter of my life feeling empowered, ready to move on, and looking forward to my future. I may not have expected what came next, but I had been given the chance to reclaim my narrative, and that, fittingly, was the only twist I needed.